Hello, my name is Atul Sharma. I'm an urban designer with Torrey Gallison Partners, and I want to talk about sustainable urbanism for the 99%. And by the 99%, I mean the global 99% of the population that has very few resources and very limited capital to survive on. There's a huge ecological, climatic, and social crisis coming our way, and we should talk about it. We live in the age of man. Anthropocene is upon us. There's 10 billion of us by 2045 on this planet. That's a huge number. There's 7 billion of us today, and we are irreversibly changing the way this planet works. This planet is becoming a very crowded place, and we are running out of stuff. Basic stuff like food, water, building materials are going very, very fast. How did we get here? Globalization and global urbanization has a lot to do with it. The first phase started in 1980 all the way up to 2010, started with the New Yorks, London, and Tokyos, ended with the makings of Dubai's and Shenzhen's, mostly concerned the highest classes of society that had a lot of money and resources and hired architects to do signature buildings across the world. The second phase of globalization is going to be very different. It's going to occur mostly in the emerging economies and developing countries. It is going to concern the middle and lower classes of society that don't have a lot of money or resources, and it's going to take place in mid-sized cities of 5 million or less. And these cities, whether new or old, are simply not equipped to handle this growth. So the challenge I'm putting forth here is that can we craft a set of priorities for a sustainable urbanism that are affordable, implementable, and culturally sensitive? And then can we define parameters that can be measured to gauge this new model of sustainable urbanism? In other words, can we do good urbanism that is sustainable on a budget? So let's talk about these priorities. First one is the obvious one, climate response. 40% of our energy consumption globally comes from buildings and roads. As Calvin shows us here very clearly, just by doing simple urbanism, we can bring down our energy consumption vastly. We don't need green gadgets and gizmos to be sustainable. We just need to be logical, follow some traditions. The other piece of this puzzle is architecture actually responding to climate. Let us not do LEED buildings that look exactly the same across the climate chart, but let us do buildings that are built with local materials, stand the test of time, and are loved by the people who live in them and reflect the cultures that they belong to. Food is going to be another huge priority. There's more and more mouths to feed. There's less and less agricultural land. Growing food along the transect is a fantastic idea. I think as designers, we need to provide maximum possible opportunities to people to interact with their food, to grow their food, and to consume their food and enjoy it with the communities that they live in. A lot of these markets that we are working in have very healthy food distribution systems right now that we should try to build on. We should also try to use technology to geospatially tag food chains so that we can really begin to understand things like how many organic food sources are there within a 200-mile radius from a project, how many organic farms there are around a site, etc., etc. Now, there's a huge deficit of nature in these parts of the world as well. A good question to ask ourselves, I believe, is that how much nature per capita are we providing in the projects that we create? How much preserved forest, how much agricultural land, and how much parks and open space per capita are we providing? I think that's a good metric to measure. Water is a very, very scarce commodity in these emerging countries. Water is used not just for drinking in these parts, but also extensively for agriculture and cultural uses. So to think of water sustainably, we need to think about how we can reuse water, not just for drinking, but also for agriculture and cultural uses. One of the biggest reasons why people are moving to these cities is so that their kids can have access to better education than they did. This is a brain drain map of the world, and it shows how severely impacted these parts of the world are because of people leaving abroad to get jobs. So let us think of not just housing and jobs balance, but let us think of this equation of housing, jobs, and knowledge balance. Let us ask ourselves how many types of build units we are providing in our projects, but then also take it further, ask ourselves how many white collar, how many blue collar jobs you're providing, and how many primary, middle, high schools we are providing, and how many universities and higher education people have access to in our sites. Now, cost as a measure of sustainability is fascinating. The question is, do we want to build with local material and local labor that knows how to make beautiful buildings from that material, or do we want to import some foreign material and then have to import labor to work with that material? This idea of lifespan of a building. We really want to be creating buildings that stand 100 years and are reused at least 5 to 6 times. Let's not make buildings that fall over after 6 months after being built because they were built with materials that the local labor really didn't know how to work with, and ended up making buildings that didn't stand up too long. Mobility is going to be a huge issue in this part of the world as well. Let us create places with fantastic amount of connectivity, huge numbers of intersection per square mile, incredible walking scores, lots and lots of pedestrian options and mobility options, and fantastic transit options. I think all this is going to be very important for us to get to a sustainable future. Public space is a huge premium in these parts of the world. So when we create public space, let us ask ourselves, how flexible is it? How many activities can our public spaces accommodate? Can it accommodate commerce? Can it accommodate protests, exercise, festivals? That is a good question to ask. Last and probably the most important piece is this idea of cultural sustainability. Let us ask ourselves, what are the most beloved traditions of these places that we work in? Is it going and praying at the mosque? Is it going and taking your kids to school? Is it going watching a soccer match or going to the bazaar in the evening? How many of these traditions can your plan accommodate is a good question to ask. For example, we worked in India on a project where water was a huge part of the culture, and we created a whole system of stormwater management that was built around spaces that were traditionally used with water, that then allowed people to interact with water in a social way, in a cultural way, and pass on their traditions from one generation to the other. So the hope is that once we have these priorities finalized, we can actually take these parameters, refine them, and come up with ways to compute them. So we can actually find out how sustainable we are in each of these priorities. How are our designs accommodating these priorities? Because the world of the future is going to be very different from what it is today. These are going to be the future CEOs and clients that we work for. And I think it's very important that we try and understand in a very concerted way what their dreams, hopes, and aspirations are. Thank you.